Hello, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us while we took care of some technical difficulties. And welcome to the ReConnect Application Portal Introduction and Financials webinar. Jessica Hilbrick, that's me, and George Boris, members of the USDA ReConnect support team, are here to walk you through today's presentation. We will have a live question and answer period at the end of the presentation, but due to the length of the content, time may be limited. Please submit questions through the chat, and the questions that we do not get to during the webinar, we will post answers to in the coming days. And if you're starting to work on your application following this webinar and you have some follow-up questions, you can always submit questions through the Contact Us form on the portal. Before we get into the presentation, I want to take a moment and mention other technical assistance events that we have coming up. We will have 2 more webinars within the next week. On Thursday, we will have a webinar devoted to the mapping component of the application with a live demonstration using the mapping tool. The webinar will take place at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, May 2nd. If you plan on joining us for the mapping webinar, it may be helpful to explore the eligible area map ahead of time at reconnect.usda.gov. On Monday, May 6th, we will be hosting an Ask the Expert webinar. This webinar does not have a planned presentation, but will be an opportunity to ask questions about the ReConnect program to a panel of USDA experts. This webinar will take place on Monday, May 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week, USDA and the Technical Assistance team will be hosting our 5th workshop in Auburn, Alabama. This workshop will take place Wednesday and Thursday, May 8th and May 9th. This workshop will have USDA experts and technical assistance staff reviewing and explaining program requirements and walking through the application system. Registration is still open for this workshop, and you can sign up by going to the events page of the ReConnect website. We will be having our 6th and final technical assistance workshop for this funding opportunity announcement in Alexandria, Minnesota on May 15th and 16th. This will also be a Wednesday-Thursday workshop. And if you're interested in any of the events that I mentioned, webinars or workshops, you can still register, and links to register are available for all of the planned events on the ReConnect website under the Events section. Before we start, we wanted to give you an overview of what to expect during this webinar. We will walk through getting started, obtaining access credentials, ReConnect account setup, account information, Capital Investment Workbook or CIW and Capital Investment Schedule, CIS, financials, financial statements including an application demonstration, available resources, and ending with questions and answers. So before we start that, I wanted to give everyone a reminder of this program and an introduction. In the 2018 Consolidated Appropriations Act, Congress provided $600 million to the broadband pilot program that we are now calling the ReConnect program. This program is a pilot program offering a unique federal financing option in the form of grants, loans, and combinations thereof to extend broadband service to rural areas. The program focuses on areas that completely lack or have insufficient broadband service. Sufficient access is defined in the statute as 10 megabits per second downstream and 1 megabit per second upstream. If an area has less than 10-1 service, then the area is eligible. The program includes incentives, which are built into the application process, that encourage applicants to focus on farms, businesses, educational facilities, healthcare facilities, and critical community facilities in solution planning. The minimum requirement is to provide 25 3 megabits per second service to rural America. In fiscal year 2019, an additional $550 million was added to the program by Congress. With this additional funding, The 10-1 eligibility service requirement and other requirements of this program may change in future funding opportunity announcements. There are 3 products offered through this program: loans, a combination loan and grants. The loan product has $200 million in available funding, and the maximum award amount for projects will be $50 million. The interest rate for these loans will be at 2%. Next, the loan grant combination product has $200 million in available funding, split $100 million for grants and $100 million for loans. The maximum award amount for projects will be $50 million, and the loan and grant amounts will always be equal. The interest rate for this product will be based on the Treasury rate at the time of the advance. Finally, the grant product has $200 million in available funding. The maximum award amount for this product will be $25 million, and applicants are required to provide a 25% match. That match can only be in cash. Across all products, there is a minimum speed requirement of 25.3 megabits per second service, and the combination 100% grant products will be incentivized to provide higher speeds via the scoring criteria. This is a screenshot of the ReConnect website. When you go to reconnect.usda.gov, at the top of the page, you will see a section that says, "Now accepting rural e-connectivity pilot program applications." Anyone looking to enter the application system will hit Apply Now. We will start with obtaining access credentials. In order to access the system, prospective applicants will need to obtain Level 2 eAuthentication or eAuth access credentials. You first start by creating an account via the USDA eAuthentication homepage. That website is www.eauth.usda.gov. And as you can see, it was added in a box on the screen for you. Applicants will then navigate to create an account link and select Register for a Level 2 account button as seen on the slide. After populating the required information to obtain eAuth Level 2 credentials, the user will be routed to a summary page. Review the information for accuracy and select Submit. An email will be sent to your email address with additional instructions to complete the process. Once you receive your eAuthentication credentials, navigate to the ReConnect program website using Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Microsoft Edge. The application system will not work with Internet Explorer. Applicants must download and use one of these 3 browsers. Once the login page has rendered, navigate to the top right corner of your browser and select the Login button shown in red. The user will be routed to a login screen as seen in the figure. Clicking the Community eAuth button will route the user to the eAuthentication login. Under the User ID and Password section, enter your eAuth credentials, meaning your user ID and password, and then click the Login button as shown. Now that credentials have been obtained, applicants will need to create their ReConnect account before preparing applications. The second step to creating an application is to submit an Authorized Representative Request, or ARR. This request ensures that the right people from the applicant's team have the administrator and representative signature certifier roles. The ARR is important because it signifies that the applying entity has the authority to enter into a legal agreement with USDA. The governing body resolution, which I will cover on the next slide, asserts that the governing members of the entity are allowing the application to be submitted. The ARR designates at a minimum the representative signature certifier, abbreviated RepSignCert, and administrators. The ARR can be submitted by either the rep-signed cert or administrator, but must at a minimum assign the rep-signed cert. Administrators and representative signature certifiers must be employed by the applying entity. More than one person can be assigned the administrator role, but only one person may be designated as the representative signature certifier. Both roles can interact with the application and connect other users to the applicant's account. However, only the rep-signed cert has the authority to provide signatures, authorized certifications, and submit the application. To verify that the correct people are assigned to those roles, the governing body resolution must be submitted. The instructions on the ReConnect website provide two sample resolutions, corporation and LLC. If the applicant is an entity other than a corporation or LLC, then the content in the sample resolutions can be modified to reflect the applicant's legal structure. The screenshot on this slide shows where you can find the ARR resolution instructions and samples on the ReConnect website. If you start at reconnect.usda.gov, these instructions will be found under Forms and Resources in the section labeled Application and Award Materials. Note this document appears second in the list. This is an old screenshot. The form is in the same place, but the application guide is now located directly above it. And now we're going to transition to a video on how to submit the ARR process. To apply for ReConnect funds, you must create an account. This video shows you how to start an account by creating and submitting an Authorized Representative Request, or ARR, in the ReConnect application system. After you've logged into the system using your Level 2 USDA eAuthentication ID, or eAuth ID, you reach the system's home screen. You'll see a blue navigation bar across the top of the screen, which contains the Accounts link. There is also a tile below the bar for Accounts. You can click either link or tile to enter. Next, the Authorized Representative Request screen appears. Click the drop-down box beside Primary Program and choose Telecommunications. Then click the drop-down box beside Sub-Program and choose ReConnect. Move down the screen to Applicant Information and fill out the legal name of applicant. Fill in the taxpayer ID number and choose the applicant's state headquarters from a drop-down menu. Scroll down the screen to the Authorized Representative section. You can have one and only one representative signature certifier for your organization, and you can't create an account without a rep-signed cert. Click Key Contact to make your rep-signed cert a key contact for your account. And notice that the rep-signed cert's first name, last name, and email address have been filled in from their eAuth ID. Fill in the phone number and Level 2 eAuthentication ID. Next, click Security Role, and from the drop-down menu, choose Representative Signature Certifier. And you can learn more about the security roles in the application guide. You can repeat this process to set up one or more administrators either now or later. Scroll down the screen to the Resolution section. Attach your resolution by clicking the Attach icon, browsing to the correct file on your computer, and choosing that file. A confirmation message appears showing the file name, size, and a delete icon. Click the Submit button for the request, and a confirmation screen appears stating that it could take up to 2 business days to evaluate your ARR. Click Done and return to the system's home screen. So now I want to circle back and remind you of some of our tips for completing this process. First, prepare a governing body resolution that follows the RUS instructions. The legal name stated in the resolution must match the legal name stated in the ARR. The resolution must clearly specify the people in the applicant's organization who can interact with the system as a representative signature certifier and administrators. At a minimum, the resolution must contain the name of the representative signature certifier. The rep sign cert can add other key contacts, including people that will be administrators, to the account after the ARR is approved. If the ARR identifies administrators in addition to the rep sign cert, then the administrator will be able to add key contacts to the account after the ARR is approved. Next tip, make a plan for determining the application's key players. You may not want to have everyone to have access to your application. Also remember that everyone that is anticipated to enter the intake system, not just people listed in the ARR, must have Level 2 eAuthentication to access the ReConnect system. Next, only the people identified on the authorized representative request should enter the ReConnect application portal initially. Other individuals must not enter the portal until they receive an email indicating that they may do so. Otherwise, these individuals risk being locked out of the portal. It is the responsibility of the users approved on the ARR to add other key contacts to their account. When the rep sign cert or administrator adds a key contact to an application, the system will automatically send an email notification to the new key contact explaining that they have been linked to the application and assigned a specific role. Only after this notification has been received should these other users enter the portal. If individuals try to access the portal before receiving this particular email notification, then they will be locked out of the system. Therefore, it is imperative that anyone that is not part of the ARR wait to enter the portal until they have received an email invitation. Once the ARR request has been processed and approved, it's now time to enter account information into the ReConnect application system. To get started, enter and update the account information fields by selecting the Account Header tab, then the account name hyperlink as shown on the slide. As you can see, there are multiple tabs on the home page which allow applicants to manage account information, key contacts, documents, and RUS IDs. Then the user should navigate to the Account Information subheader tab to populate the required account information. You may not be able to read the information here, but it is the general account information required to submit an application, and we have the list included on the next slide. A complete list of all fields may be reviewed in the application guide, which is available on the ReConnect website. So as promised, here is the account information. You can see the various data fields applicants will need to provide, including common name for the applicant, page and DUNS numbers, address, and borrowing entity type, to name a few. Under account information, applicants will also need to upload organizational documents, parent company information, affiliate information, subsidiary information, identify key contacts, upload account documents, and provide existing RUS IDs as applicable. Please remember to save your form before proceeding. Now we are ready to create an application. Here, we are going to take you into the system. Once all account information has been provided, applicants should then navigate to the application's homepage by selecting the account name hyperlink on the Authorizations page. To create a new application, select the Certification button as shown. Users will then be prompted to select the funding type, which remember are 100% grant, 50/50 loan grant, or 100% loan, and the application year. Once the user selects the funding type and application year, a blank application will be created. Applicants should be aware that this selection cannot be edited later down the application process. Multiple applications may be activated simultaneously. However, the type of application cannot be changed after it has been created. For example, you will not be able to transfer information entered in a 100% grant application to a 50/50 loan grant application later down the line. The application year will automatically default to the calendar year, in this case 2019. And please remember, only one application may be submitted per entity under this FOA. We are now ready to develop an application. Please note that the gold icons at the top of the screen have been added for use in this presentation to help better understand what section we are in. Applicants will not see these icons in the actual application system. The portal does not require completion of each layer or tab in sequence, but changes within the layers or tabs can ripple throughout the application. That ripple may mean the applicant will have to adjust finances to meet newly proposed facilities. That ripple could also affect overall eligibility or feasibility. While a specific order is not required, the system is designed to move from left to right and top to bottom within subsections. On the slide, you can see the various application sections and subsections that must be completed and validated in order to successfully submit your application for review. Depending on your preferred funding category, awardee type, project and service area characteristics, the application will automatically filter out sections that are not required or applicable for your application. Applicants should also be aware that specific answers to various application components, such as the availability and use of unadvanced prior loan funds, or UPLFs, for the project will have downstream effects, prompting the applicant to prepare a UPLF capital investment workbook. I will now walk you through the entire home screen before George dives into the financial section. So you can see navigation goes from left to right and from top to bottom, but remember, this is not required, just recommended. Starting with the project section, here applicants will complete the project information required level of NEPA review and upload project documents. Followed by the service area section. Here, applicants will draw their service area polygons. Then the network section. Here, applicants will provide their network design, identify key build-out timeline and project milestones, prepare capital investment workbooks and schedules, and upload and manage network documents. After the service area and network sections have been completed, applicants should move to the financial section. Here, applicants will need to complete all underlying financial section information shown on the slide. Highlighting a few of those sections include financial statements, revenue schedules, and existing amortization schedules for other sources of debt, to name a few. After financials have been completed, applicants should complete the environmental section, during which you will prepare construction maps identifying and describing sites and routes, and complete EQs and upload environmental documents. The EQs are available outside of the application system. You can view them now on the ReConnect website, and they are under Forms and Resources. Please note that this is for a case example. We have added evaluation criteria for reference of those applicants who will be applying for the competitive 100% grant and 50/50 loan grant combo products. If you're applying for the 100% loan, you will not see that tab. Applicants should then upload required licenses and agreements, such as indefeasible rights of use agreements, followed by the certification section, where you can check self-certification boxes, such as self-certifying that you aren't delinquent on any federal debt obligations. Before submitting, applicants can manage all uploaded documents as shown on the slide. And lastly, applicants will have the ability to review their summary and submit their applications. With that, I will turn it over to George Voris, who will walk you through the financial section of the application.
Thank you, Jessica. So I'm going to tie this back to one of the previous webinars that we conducted, because we will cover some components of the network section. Specifically, that is the capital investment workbook and capital investment schedule. So on the screen here, you can see the home screen. We're going to navigate to the network section, and under capital investment workbook, we are able to then populate project assets associated with a specific service area that we've previously drawn on the service area information map. And to do so, we'll select the appropriate service area, and then we pre-populated some examples, but here you would add a new asset, and you'll be able to select from various categories, which will pre-populate asset types. You can then describe that asset, the quantity, and the unit price. And you will do this for every project asset for each service area that you've identified on your map. Next, we'll want to navigate to the Common Network Facilities Capital Investment Workbook. Applicants will list all physical project assets that will be used in the construction of common network facilities and their costs. While service area costs are exclusive to a specific service area, common network facility costs are more broad purpose costs. These costs are shared between 2 or more service areas. So for example, if fiber cable is routed to serve 5 different service areas, even if it includes the proposed funded service area itself, these costs are considered common network facility costs. Applicants should only include the portion of these costs allocable to the service area. For example, if 50% of the common network facility is allocable to the PFSAs, 50% of the cost should be allocated to the PFSA capital investment workbook. The remaining 50% of the cost should be included in if a non-funded service area has been identified, it would be then allocated to that capital investment workbook. So on the slide, you'll see an example of potentially one asset. So we've identified that, and we're going to see how that will carry through downstream. Before proceeding with the rest of the capital investment workbook sections, we're going to show you an example of a non-funded service area capital investment workbook. And we do that by navigating back to the capital investment workbook, and then under the second column, you'll see capital investment workbook for service area costs of a non-funded service area. Again, we've pre-populated an example for this demonstration. So now that we've identified all the project assets for each capital investment workbook, we will navigate to the capital investment workbook summary. This is an important step to complete before proceeding to the schedule, particularly for loans, as you will need to identify the requested grant funding or loan funding amount before proceeding. At the top, you will see a summary of all the project assets that we've identified in the capital investment workbook, and they've carried through to the summary page. We will now want to identify the requested grant amount. And for this example, we're assuming 100% grant application. We've pre-populated the requested funding amount. However, you will have to provide that assumption manually. Please be sure to save before proceeding to the capital investment schedule. So we'll begin with the capital investment schedule for the proposed funded service areas. So for each project asset that we've identified on the capital investment workbooks for proposed funded service areas, they have carried through to the schedule. We will then need to distribute the full estimated costs of each project asset throughout the course of the build-out period. So on the screen here, we can see for the towers that we've provided, we have a total estimated cost of $40,000, and we have just distributed that full amount over the course of the build-out period. And by saving, if we've done our math correctly, the system will validate that yes, in fact, the full amount has been distributed. This should be completed before moving to any other section of any other financial section. We will now navigate to the annual capital investment total summary. If we've successfully identified all project assets and distributed the full costs, we will be able to view a summary of all that information on this table. And we can associate those annual capital investment amounts by source. So if we have a grant, if we have a loan, if we have a 100% grant, we would see the match component of it as well. In addition, there's an opportunity to provide other funds. And as you'll notice on the screen now, there are various tooltips. We encourage you all to use those as you prepare the schedules. So once we've saved the capital investment summary, you'll notice that we have not actually prepared that information successfully to this point, in which case you would have to go back and ensure that everything ties out before proceeding to the next section of the application. For the purposes of this exercise, we're going to proceed just to demonstrate the remaining financial section. We're going to start by navigating to the financials header and the local network services revenue subsection. Here, applicants can identify service offerings, subscriber projections, other sources of revenue, and then be able to view a breakdown of subscribers by proposed funded service area if there are multiple identified. We're going to start with the service offerings section. So we've already prepared one, and we're able to see that information has been successfully saved by the system. If we want to edit, we can go into that service offering by selecting the Edit button. That will route us to this information. At this point, we will want to know the type of service offering, and there's a drop-down menu to choose from. We will also want to know a description of that service offering, a price for that service offering offered on a monthly basis, and then the proposed speed of that service offering, both down and up. In addition, we will want to know the customer base, whether that's residential or business, and then we also want to know if it's a new or existing service offering. Anytime you make a change, please be sure to save before proceeding. We can also add new service offerings if there are multiple service offerings to report. Please be sure to associate each service offering with a specific service area. Okay. So the next thing that we'll look to are subscriber projections. USDA will require applicants to furnish subscriber projections according to each service area. In this, you'll notice that the price that we've identified on one of the service offerings has carried through to the top line of this table. We'll also at this point want to add our assumptions for new subscribers over the course of the build-out period, in addition to cancellations. You'll want to complete this task for each service area that you've provided a service offering for. Okay. So if we proceed with we're going to transition back to the deck at this point, and we've skipped ahead a little bit, but we just want to reiterate some of the slides before showing you the financials. Again, this is the annual capital investment total schedule. We can see the estimated amount of investment from source. And then we're now clear to move to the financial section. To start with this section, if there are competitive service offerings to report, we will need to identify those for the USDA. At this point, we're collecting the same information as we have collected for our proposed service offerings. Again, you'll have to associate these competitive service offerings with the appropriate service area. Next, we'll want to prepare the depreciation schedules. Applicants will need to identify the depreciation rates by project asset. If the applicant is regulated by a public utilities commission, for example, they should adopt the rates prescribed by that regulator. Alternatively, if that applicant is not regulated by some sort of regulatory body, they should adopt rates prescribed by the USDA. And those rates are available on the website today. Once the depreciation schedule or depreciation rates have been identified and the capital investment schedule has been successfully prepared, the system will be able to calculate the composite economic life of useful assets. You can think of this as a weighted average life of useful assets. For this example on the slide, you can see that the system has calculated a composite economic life of 15 years. The term will be, for a loan, will be your composite economic life, 15 years, plus the 3-year deferral period, and that's deferral interest and principal. On the slide, we can now see the annual depreciation expense summary by service area. So for each asset, we can see the depreciation expense for service areas. Finally, before proceeding, we can view a summary of the depreciation expenses that the system has calculated. In addition, you'll be able to add some other depreciation expenses if they exist. Please be sure to provide justifications for these assumptions. If there's other sources of debt to report to USDA, you will need to do so. Specifically, for this example, an applicant has identified that there is a existing note that they have outstanding from the USDA. USDA will need you to identify that note, specifically the original principal amount, the outstanding principal balance, the interest rate, the frequency of repayments, the monthly payment, the interest rate, if I haven't already said that, and the start date of that note. And the system can then calculate that amortization schedule. Moving on, you can see the capital contribution schedule on the screen. If there are, for example, if there's evidence of equity infusion to report, you will do so on the capital contribution schedule. If you are pursuing either a 50-50 grant loan or a 100% loan, you will want to navigate to the amortization schedule component of the application system. If it's a 100% loan, the only input that you'll need to provide is the start date. The total amount which we've requested upstream in the capital investment workbook summary has been auto-populated, in addition to the interest rate, the deferral period, and the term. Once all inputs have been validated, select the Calculate Payments button to generate the schedule. If it's been successfully generated, you'll see the summary of that amortization schedule calculated by the system. There may be other things on the worksheet to identify or to review, but for the purposes of this presentation, we're just going to show the summary. combined the trailing 3 slides, this is what the screen's going to look like for an applicant as they prepare their schedules. Next, there's the funded debt summary. This is no edits to be made here. This is simply a worksheet for the applicant to review to ensure that the funded debt summary is consistent with the information they may have in their own financial models and documentation. So now that we're going to transition back to the application system and review the financial statements. So one thing to know is applicants should enter information based on the calendar year regardless of their fiscal year. Applicants whose fiscal year does not align with the calendar year should not copy line items directly from their financial statements, but should calculate the calendar year values in advance. Revenues and expenditures that are included in the 5-year projection but not accounted for in the build-out, even if RUS money is not being leveraged, still need to be justified by the applicant and could be cause for rejection. The idea is that USDA wants to get an idea of the entire entity and not just the financials of the proposed project. The income statement will be reviewed by USDA in order to evaluate the applicant's historical financial performance and anticipated financial performance over the build-out period. The income statement will be evaluated to understand anticipated top-line growth, subscriber projections, increases and decreases in future expenditures and taxes, growth rates and trends in expenses, and profitability. On the presentation, you can see a pre-populated income statement. One thing to note here is that various fields are pre-populated based on underlying schedules successfully prepared upstream in the application. However, there are a few fields to manually enter data. The information manually entered should be substantiated by the applicant in supporting documentation. Various other aggregate line items, such as the tier and debt service coverage ratios, will be auto-calculated by the system. Now we're going to transition to the balance sheet. Be reviewed by USDA in order to evaluate historical trends in the corporate and capital structures and provide snapshots on how they are expected to change over the course of the build-out. Assets and liabilities of the USDA will specifically review the assets and liabilities of the corporation, anticipated leverage, debt burden over time, and anticipated liquidity. Applicants must prepare and identify the assumptions underlying the balance sheet projections in the current assets section, non-current assets, property, plant, and equipment, current liabilities, long-term debt, and other liabilities, in addition to equity. Similarly to the income statement, aggregate line items such as total equity to total assets, the current and quick ratios, those will be auto-calculated. Again, you'll see that some of the projections will be pulled through from schedules already prepared. So please be sure to prepare those schedules prior to advancing to the financial statement section. The next financial statement, the statement of cash flows, are by and large auto-calculated if the underlying schedules and previous two financial statements have been prepared. While we wait for the screen to render, there are a few manual inputs that you will want to provide on the cash flow statement, which will be detailed in the application guide. So please refer to that as a resource. And now on the screen, we can see that there is a other line item from cash flow from operating activities, for which you, if there is data to report, please provide both historical and projections. Next is the cash flow from investing activities. Here, you'll want to see capital. You would want to provide assumptions for capital expenditures throughout the course of the build-out, in addition to historical data. Next, you'll want to move to the cash flows from financing activities. Again, there are some manual fields to provide, such as proceeds from grant funds. Please be sure to review all 3 financial statements before saving and moving on to the certification section and other subsequent sections of the application. So to fit within the allotted time, we are going to wrap up by stating some additional resources that applicants may refer to during the application process.
So just as a reminder, USDA is providing additional resources and technical assistance to applicants as they prepare to apply. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, we have 2 additional workshops which will be taking place in May. Those will be in Auburn, Alabama next week, and Alexandria, Minnesota the following week. Registration is still open for both these workshops, and you can register for them by going to the events page on the ReConnect website. We're going to continue to host webinars on specific aspects of the application. As I said at the beginning of today's webinar, we will have a mapping demonstration on Thursday, and we will have an Ask the Expert open question webinar on Monday, May 6th. You can register for these events on the events page of the ReConnect website. The portal itself also contains many resources to help you through the application, including the published application guide and many sample and example forms and resources. Please check those out on the ReConnect website. There are also over 100 FAQs published, so you can refer to those as well. And we are maintaining helping with individual questions. So after you leave this webinar, if you are working on your application and you have a question, please use the Contact Us form on the website, and you will get a personalized response to your specific question. So really quickly, I'm going to recognize that we do not have a lot of time left on this webinar. Please continue to submit your questions through the chat. We are going to collect them and post answers as soon as we can, but we are going to take a couple live questions from Farwa Nakwi. So first question, are you able to view the application prior to being an administrator?
The answer is no. You would have to, the first step of the process is that you would have to submit the ARR, and once the ARR is approved, and if you are listed as an administrator, you will be granted access if the ARR is approved. However, we have had a technical glitch in our system, and in some cases we are able to add the administrator along with the rep sign cert as part of the approval process, and others we are not. And for those instances where we are not, we are responding back to the requester who submit the ARR, telling them that the rep sign cert has been approved, so they can log into the system and add the administrator into the key under the key contacts tab.
Can one entity apply for multiple funding categories?
As an applicant, you can create as many applications you want in the system. However, you will only be allowed to submit one application under this FOA.
Can an application be started prior to having all of the account information uploaded?
The system will not allow you to start an application until the account section has been completed. However, the uploads do not have to be uploaded at the time when the account information is completed. The applicant can always go back after they have started the application and upload the account information, account documents.
How can the application be printed?
The way to print the application would be if you would go to the Summary Submit tab, there is a button there that says View PDF, and if you click on that, you will see that the application, a PDF copy of the application is generated, and you can print the application from that.
And if you are looking at our screen, it is being demonstrated right now. If you construct in 1 year, do you need to project revenues over a 5-year period?
The revenues and expenses have to be projected over a 5-year period. So regardless of whether you're going to complete your build out in 1 year or you might take all 5 years, the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, all will have to be completed for 5 years.
We are rendering that on the screen for viewers right now. So as you can see, as Farwa stated, you will need to fill out that information for all 5 years. Can you make changes to a financial report after saving it?
Yes, absolutely. If you need to go back and make changes to any of the financial statements or any section of the application, you can go ahead and make those updates and save it. However, there are certain sections that have a downstream effect on the application, on the rest of the sections in the application, so you need to be mindful of that when you are making those changes.
Is there a guide to determining what is a non-funded service area cost? If so, where can it be found?
There is no guide for determining what a non-funded service area cost is. The way the application is set up is that the applicant will have to draw their entire service area, funded and non-funded, and if the applicant is proposing to construct any of the non-funded service areas, then they would have to complete the capital investment workbook for the non-funded portion.
Okay, this is going to be our last question that we can answer live today due to time. Who is required to file the EEO-1 report?
Any company who has over 100 employees has to file an EEO-1 report. If you would like more information on that, you can look into the application guide, and the application guide has a link that will take you to the EEO website, which will give you additional information.
Thank you, Farwa, so much for being here with us to answer questions today. I just want to remind everybody that we will be collecting questions through the chat and be posting answers. And there will be additional webinars on Thursday with a mapping demonstration and an additional webinar on Monday with Ask the Panel of Experts. We will also be posting the recording of this webinar so that you can review all the information, including the live screen demonstrations that were shared. So thank you everyone for joining us today.